We're looking at the diff, and I just want to point out some little things before you go to fit our fabricated diff support cage. Now, the camera is focused on the top of the differential, and I've cross-hatched a little area here with texture marker just to show you that a little bit of metal needs to be taken off here. The aluminium housing sits a little bit proud of the actual cast iron diff housing itself, so you need to just take off a little bit of metal across here and just to smooth it off a bit. It doesn't hurt anything of the construction or the strength of anything there. It's just taking off a little bit of waste casting that stands proud of the metal there. So do that. That's the first step you've got to do. Now we're looking at the bottom of the diff. I've turned it upside down on the bench so it's just easy to see. Now, the bottom of this cast iron diff nose has already had a little bit of metal removed from it, and you'll see that the alloy housing sits proud, probably about 2.5–3 mil there at its highest point. So I've cross-hatched again where the metal is to be removed. Now that particular little bit of metal there on the housing, that's the part that snags on the bottom tray of the chassis when you're trying to remove the diff from the car. It's just a real pain. So if you could use a flat wheel on an angle grinder and just smooth it off so that it's nice and flat, it will make it so much easier to take the diff out. And I'll show you another little part in a minute too. But so those, the top of the diff, the bottom of the diff, and that's going to make things a lot easier for you. Now with the diff turned upside down still, we're looking at the front nose part of the diff. This is the underneath of the diff. Now this part of the diff comes out quite a bit. It's got quite a protrusion on it. And it's all part of the factory machining. There's one at the back here, another one here, and another machining here. They're little detents that are used in the manufacture of the diff. But the metal here, this creates a major part of the diff that snags in the chassis. Now you've got to be careful when you start grinding metal off here, because underneath, inside of there is an oil channel which provides lubricant for the bearing at the top front here. I had one guy get in touch with me one day that he went through to the gallery. So he shouldn't have. I've done 3 diffs and I've never hit the gallery yet. So use this little detent as a guide. Do not grind that away. Leave about half of it there, but you just slope it down and round it off nicely at the front here. And you'll find that the diff will come out of the chassis and you can put it back in really easy. I've put demo videos on my website and you can watch those and see how easy it is. It's just so simple to do, it really is, but you have to do these little mods. People cuss and swear and say they won't come out, but they do. They're really easy to do. Takes a little bit of work to undo all the drive shafts and the prop shaft and everything, and the top mount bolts, but overall it's just a simple job, so nothing to be afraid of. Okay, we move on to a few more little tricks and things to do with this new diff brace cage support. Now when you put it on, you're going to have to put some little packing washers, and we'll supply those. I think, whoops, there's one there. A little about 2.5 mil, 3 mil, 2.5 mil thick washer, and that goes in there, right? Just to fill up the counter bore. And there's a couple of others a little bit higher up in here, and it's just normal washers go in there, but it needs about 2 each on there, just to pack it in the void. Otherwise, when you put the nut on the stud, it will tend to pull the metal into the counter bore, and you don't want that. You just want it to remain level with the surface up here. So that's pretty easy, pretty simple. The next little trick you have to watch with the diff and putting in and out of the chassis, we're looking at the left hand lug. Now you notice there's a little chamfer on the edge here. Now these larger diameter 35mm lugs do fail on the chassis because you've got more area. They're a little bit more difficult to put in and out of the chassis, but if you take a small chamfer, probably about 19-20mm long, and just shave it off a bit with a flat wheel mounted on an angle grinder, it just makes it a little bit easier to get in and out. But these are all snag points. You've got here, underneath, and at the front of the diff. You get rid of those snag points and you could take the diff in and out blindfolded. It's just not a hassle. Okay, we're ready to put on a magic diff brace. Now, before we proceed, I've got the packing washer here, and we've got 2 packing washers on each of the other little counterbores over the studs. Now, I know some people have bolts that screw into the housing. That's okay, but not my favourite way of setting these up. Much prefer to have studs which have UNC thread that's screwed into the housing, and all your tension is going on your, or the work is going on your outer stud, which is 5/16 UNF. That's okay if you have bolts. It might be a little bit more fiddly setting this up, but it's easy to do with studs. So anyway, we'll plonk it on. Now, you can come in from either corner, but better to probably, this one here for some reason, easy to start on the left. So you just work it in, and there you go. So just to show that the holes all line up. So you put another set of washers and extra, well, you're supposed to use nylock nuts. Again, it's just part of your own system, the way it all sets up. So you put your nuts on and screw them up, and it's on. So just make sure that these hold the bolts that are loose. Like, you're not going to use them, they're just in there for alignment. So that will work well. So once it's on there, then you can actually lift the whole thing into the chassis, and it slides in without a drama. But I'll show you just one more little trick where we're talking about the, I'll just get the camera down there, where we're talking about the little chamfer on here. Well, we also remove part of the bracket to coincide with that little chamfer. So again, that's a snag point. So the less snag points you have when you're putting a diff in and out of the chassis, the easier it's going to be. So of course, after you put your bracket on, then you put your little diff breather back in, make sure that's secured, and you're good to go. Assemble the rest of your diff if you have to do that. Yeah, no, it's a great product. It works really well. We've been using one on our car for more than 35 years now. Never had an issue with it, and they really do the job. So have a think about it.